Hello everyone, Namaskar and welcome to the last part of this PowerPoint presentations, and in this few points which probably we might have not discussed. So, here I am more focusing on oral presentation, the oral part of our PowerPoint presentation, and some of the aspects we have already discussed in part 1 or part 2. Part 1 we discussed very briefly, in part 2 to some extent, and now here. So, presentation of content, this point is important. So, whenever we are making oral presentation, we require to give this kind of information. So, objectives, if suppose I am going to make a presentation about my PhD thesis or dissertation or a project proposal, then the goals, what are my goals, what are the objectives of my presentation, that should be conveyed very initial stages of my presentation. Maybe in the after introducing the topic, I should go immediately towards my objectives, and while concluding I should cover these objectives, that these were my objectives, these my achievements or observation conclusions. So, because this will keep your audience focused, and this will appease your audience, and will keep in that framework which you want about the topic, about the objectives and all the thing. And also in the beginning one should mention that what he is going to cover. I told in the previous lecture that it is need not to show the list of content, but you must tell what you are going to talk, starting from topic to your objectives and what you have achieved, what are your findings if it is you are going to make, or how if it is a project proposal, how you are going to achieve those objectives. So, entire thing which you when while discussing the written part of our project proposals or a document or thesis we have discussed, similar way we have to do it in the oral presentations also. Another important thing is this is very much required, we must know the audience to whom I am going to make presentation, and therefore my audience I should prepare myself accordingly, because if it is a real expert committee, then I have to be more careful, and again I should have that kind of standard so that I can convey my point or my findings, my research very nicely. So, one can know whether they are having the same background, different backgrounds and so on, and what really they are expecting from you, that is another important part. So, if I give the example of a project presentation where you are seeking funds, then they are not interested much in other things, they are interested what you are going to do, that is what are your objectives, how you are going to achieve your objectives, what are your budgets or what the budgets you are seeking, and in different heads what budget you are seeking. These are the things which a committee or expert group will look or expect from you. So, try to focus on those things rather than developing a background and other things, and always remember time is limited. The expert group, the expert committee may not allow for a unlimited time, because if you can make your point or proposal through in 10-15 minutes time, that is always very good. Otherwise, if you keep telling the things repeatedly, you are basically losing your project or maybe even job also. To be very focused and the presentation should be also very focused. Another thing is that one has to keep the interest of the audience or experts alive. So, that way there are more chances of getting good success, and how they are, what is their attitude towards me or towards you and my subject, that also you keep assessing while making a presentation. Sometimes we have to make a presentation in front of very young people, sometimes with the very senior people. So, if I know beforehand, then accordingly I would prepare my slides and my oral presentation in that direction. If I know what is the educational background of the audience, that is also very good, and what is their position in their profession or what the position they are occupying. It again I have to be dealing accordingly, because if it is school children, I would be having a kind of different dealing with the very simple things, making them interesting, navigating through my presentation. But if it is a really expert group, then I do not have to do the background work. Immediately I can come to my objectives and the way I will move and what are the results I expect and what funding I am seeking. So, immediately within 10-15 minutes I can convey. Normally we do not have to bother about what is the culture or ethnic background, but anyway if these informations are available beforehand, they may help you towards making a good presentation. Another important thing is that if all this information is available beforehand, then the better presentation can be planned better, both slides wise as well as oral part planned in a better manner. And in viewing this list about the audience and other information, the attitude is very important. Your attitude towards the audience and audience attitude towards you or towards the subject, that is very very important here. Sometimes it matters, and of course this will depend on the situation as well. Suppose we have submitted a thesis, now it is a defense of the PhD thesis. So, everything whatever was in the thesis need not to be presented in the oral form. See, written document is different and it should be very complete, but your PowerPoint presentation, oral presentation has to be very comprehensive. Time is limited, there you may not be having limits of pages and other thing in case of thesis, but here sometimes in the conferences you are asked to make a poster presentation and they will give a fixed space that this much, say 1 meter by 1 meter. Now, everything whatever the work which you have done, you have to present in 1 meter by 1 meter. So, only you should bring the most important points which are needed to convey your point or your research. Rest of the things you can definitely avoid. Basically these things, because what I am trying to say, the written documents, poster presentations, oral presentations, or before that the slides and oral present, all are 4 different things, 4 different activities are there, and sometimes we have to go through all these activities. So, as per the time, as per the requirements, we should have emphasis accordingly. Oral presentation becomes many times is the last thing, maybe in case of a project or a PhD thesis or dissertations, and that becomes the last thing, and therefore that has to be very complete by itself, very interesting, and the audience interest should be always kept alive, and this all I have to do it, or the presenter who is going to do it should do it. And what are the standard suggestions, advice that tell them what you are going to tell them, and then tell them what is there, and then all them what you told them. These kind of things are there. The questions which you are going to raise or targeting you should raise for yourself, what you are going to tell to the audience, how you are going to tell audience, and what they are going to tell after your presentation. So, these things are very very important. The purpose also is very very important, and the way you present your ideas or work, that order should be also nicely prepared, because what I am trying to say, that conclusion should not come before the objectives. That kind of order should not be made. There should be order, there should be a sequence. Sequence has to be simple. Many times it is just a conventional sequence, and which sequence follows by introducing the topic, then your main body or the work, and then summary and conclusions. And the same sequence people follow in your written documents as well as in presentations also. So, there are some fixed structures in case of a PhD thesis or papers, like we introduce the first the title, then abstract, then keyword, then introduction, methods and data, methods, and then discussion, then conclusion, references, acknowledgement. This is in the written, but in the presentation many things can be minimized and many things should be emphasized as per the time and as per the audience. So, this has to be divided as per the requirements. An introduction, how much emphasis you want to put introduction while making a oral presentation, how much you want to make or emphasize on main body, conclusion, discussions and other things. So, the first part, the introduction, and that we should organize in a manner that we should be able to introduce the topic or subject which I am going to talk in a very clear manner, that this is what I have thought, this is what I have been working, and this is what I am going to talk in my presentation. So, that comes under the introduction. I said that the written thesis or written manuscript is completely different. There you have to write everything, but here you would be speaking and not bringing the entire text there. Now, when you come to this part of the body of the presentation, that of course includes objectives and other things, then the same, almost same sequence has to be followed, and one navigates through different sections of your presentation, starting with title and introduction. And this body of the presentation should be designed in a manner that it is easy to follow by the audience, and of course it has to be brief, focused and nicely done thing. And each point has to be demarcated very separately. Suppose I have introduced the topic, now I should tell that next section I should clearly demarcate. Now I am going to, these are my objectives. So, this is how the demarcation will come while making a presentation, and these are my achievements, findings, and these are my points which I could not achieve, may be achieved in the future. So, kind of recommendations is also there. Now, results parts, objectives and results parts. There in oral presentations one should be putting more emphasis on this, because the audience is not much interested in the background thing. Audience is interested what you targeted and how much you could achieve, and that will come under this section, the results. So, results should be very clear, concise, focused, and these are the things which you would like to present with the nice visuals, maybe graphs, figures, plots, whatever is possible, one should do it very nicely, this section. And our aim is, while making oral presentation, that we should lead the audience or guide the audience through our visual parts of this thing. And maybe after presentations, if time is permitted, then we can have some discussion. Discussion can include the interpretation, inferences, and maybe some hypothesis, and how much you could achieve, and also some recommendations for the future also, and some limitations that these things your study, but do not emphasize too much on negative aspects of your presentation or work, like limitations and other things. People can read easily and they can understand. So, always have a positive things in your discussion, because when you are going for such kind of discussion, this is what you feel, this is what you think about the work which has been done. And so, the best thing in the discussion, one should more focus on the interpretation part, inferences part, and what is possible, what are the future scenarios, how this work, that research can be used for further improvements in understanding of a particular subject, a area or field or any other thing. Now, conclusions. Conclusions should reiterate the ideas presented and reinforce the purpose of your presentation. That is what we do in the conclusions. Now, conclusions should be again in a clear bullet form with minimum text, but the best thing is just take the points and narrate on those points or communicate through your words, oral skills to the audience. And these has to be very concise, because conclusions have to be very concise. Conclusions should not be very long, because I have seen with many people in their thesis or even in PowerPoint presentations, their conclusions are running through 2-3 slides, not a good idea, not a good part of presentation. The conclusion should come just maximum within one slide, that is it. And you say that these are my findings, these are the things, reiterate the ideas which you have presented and also reinforce the purpose of your work or research. Now, some of the points we have already covered in PowerPoint presentation 1 and 2 lectures, but finally when preparing for time of actual delivery of your presentation. So, you are sitting there about to introduce now what, and so the first one should do is to relax, and one should not take, because we know that I am in the third in the sequence, now I have to speak and the second one is about to finish. So, that tension might be coming. So, the best way is to take a deep breath, relax before your name is called, or whenever in the sequence you come, and visualize your rehearsed opening statement. And now this part is very, very important, rehearsed opening statement, and do not improvise at the last moment. These are the things which makes, because the first few lines spoken by you or the first few slides presented by you makes the a lot of difference of overall presentation. So, state your objectives, the work plan very clearly to the audience, and then discuss how your material related to these objects, methods and data, how these have come. And of course, never read. Many times I have seen people are in a big conferences, they are reading the script, and that does not make a very good presentation. You might have seen people, they use the teleprompters, 2 teleprompters, and so the audience does not realize that they are reading, but just for clues or points they are having on their teleprinters, and they make a very good presentation. But these facilities might be not available for us all the time. Does not matter, we should prepare ourselves in a manner that just having few points in our slides, I should be able to navigate through things. People also used to prepare, or some people prepare some cue cards, and or they keep going through that one. But again, if you keep looking your notes and other things during your presentation, you are losing the interest of the audience. So, if at all you are having cards, cue cards, then you should have numbers, otherwise, and do not mix up with this. Few other important things before we end this part 3 or last part of our PowerPoint presentation, and how to develop good skills. These are the things which one has to remember, that stick to the plan for the presentation. We should not deviate from that. Whatever we have prepared, we should move accordingly. Or in the last moment, do not try to change the sequence or reduce or add by listening the others, because you might completely lose your control over your own presentation part or your slides. You do not know the sequence when that will come in. So, these are the things which should be avoided. Last moment changes should not be done. The better you prepare, rehearse, and then come for presentation. And another rule of thumb is that allow 2 minutes for each PowerPoint slides. As in the earlier lecture I mentioned, at least one minute must be there. But this is again not though it is a thumb rule, but depending on how much you can, using certain words or points in your slide, how much you can speak about those points. So, it depends on your skill. If you find that I can speak, I can spend 10 minutes on one slide, then that is also possible. But through my experience, I can suggest that also a distraction to the audience. Speaking on a single slide for 10 minutes is not good, because one should that enthusiasm in the audience should be kept alive, and that is one way of keeping alive, not only from the content or oral part of presentation, but the slides should keep changing. They should not be you are speaking for 10 minutes on one slide, no, or just speaking 30 seconds. So, these extremes should always be avoided. And This point I have already covered, that not too much time spent on one slide is always not good, and other things are also important, which one should learn through own experiences by making his own presentations or watching presentations of others. This is a ongoing activity. We keep learning every day while making such observations and improving ourselves on this. So, end of your presentation, ask for questions. This is a very, in a large conferences it is not possible, but in classroom of course it is possible, and we keep doing this thing. But abruptly these things should not be done, maybe at the end, because the sequence will get disturbed. But in a normal classroom these things are possible because you are having time, but in a meeting, conference or other important thing, you do not have the time to do all these kind of venture, all these kind of things. So, the questions you should allow only in the last, but in between if somebody has asked a question, allow him to speak the or narrate the entire question first. You should listen properly and then try to answer the question, because the person, some person may not want to keep aside that question till last. He would like to discuss on that slide itself. It depends on what kind of audience. If the people are going to give a funding for your project, they might raise a question there itself. So, one should listen the entire question and try to explain the point or whatever the convey answer very nicely. Once you are confident about your work, about your presentation, you would be more relaxed. So, if you are relaxed, most likely you are going to because you are having good confidence. So, this goes hand in hand. So, the confidence, how you can convey your confidence, there are ways like look your audience, not your overhead slides in the initially, depending on what kind of audience, large, small, hall, dark room or other things. So, there are many other things, small things like do not hold papers with that whispers, because this will create a noise or a click, a pen. Some people will keep doing like this, that is again a very bad practice while making a presentation. Do not keep coins in your pocket and you put your hand in the pocket, or do not put, or key chains or key rings are there, and that create the problem or noise, and that is the distraction to the audience. And of course, always avoid if you have to read something very specific, definitely one should go through, but otherwise it is good to keep speaking. In your first slide, another important thing nowadays to keep email contact in that one, so that people can note down and then they may raise a question, because in sometimes the time is not there. So, the audience is allowed only 1 or 2 questions, but there may be several questions with the audience. So, they once they have noted down your email, they might raise questions later on, and so that helps basically to communicate. See, the purpose here of all this making PowerPoint presentation to an audience, especially in conference or elsewhere, is to get feedback, so that I can improve further, not only on my style of presentation, but the main thing is the subject on which I was talking. I said these are my achievements. Some person may suggest very good points, and that really helps to improve ourselves in the future work, not only the presentation. Now, question to answer slide, these slides can follow after the conclusion, and then answers can go in the background, and whenever you want you can bring them. I would also suggest to avoid like turning off the projector, and that is not good, and sometimes you have to do it because heating and other things, but these are the things when it happens only in case of a long 2 hours lecture or 2 hours discussion. So, that because if you switch off, then it will cool down first and then switch on, and you are losing time. So, it is always good to avoid, like using this PowerPoint presenter, I can make a screen blank, and then again it is a distraction. So, the many things can be avoided here. Very briefly, I have earlier touched the handling questions, how to handle questions. So, the best thing is to listen first. You should allow the person to speak or narrate his question, and he should first finish the question. Some people might be having a question which will be of many sentences, and that becomes sometimes to the presenter little uncomfortable, because in that so many sentences he might be raising so many questions. But since you have to allow, so allow him, and then you can say once he finishes that you are having 3 questions within your 1 question. So, I will deal one by one, and that makes a very good impact in the audience, that you understand. So, in order to understand a question, you have to first listen the question. So, that is what is very, very important. So, whenever an audience is raising a question, give time, listen. You may take some pause for few seconds and then try to answer his questions. Break up his questions in several parts and then do it. Because if you are able to answer the questions perfectly and in the same order the questions were raised, that makes a real impact, and that shows the confidence in your work within yourself, and the audience also feels good that the person who has made presentations knows what he is talking. So, answering guidelines, what are the answering guidelines? Repeat is questioned. This is another very good thing which I wanted to discuss here, that sometimes the audio will not reach to the entire audience, but it is reaching to you. So, if you realize that it is not reaching to the entire audience, repeat the question, that the person has raised this question, and repeat in your words, does not matter exactly in his words, so that the entire audience knows that what the question was. And before you answer, take a moment to reflect on the question, pause for some seconds and then try to answer the question. Sometimes it happens even in the simple classrooms also, that a question, the answer to that question one may not be knowing. So, we say that no problem, I will communicate you to later, or in a classroom I say okay, in the next class first thing please remind me, I will try to answer this question or will discuss this point in length. So, these are the things one should remember, and try to follow as best methods for this session, that is question and answer session and discussion session. Very, very important to have feedbacks from the audience. You should only begin your answering questions once the person has finished the, in between if you interject and stop the person, and then it does not show a good gesture and not a good respect. So, respect the question. The point here is respect the question and try to answer the thing. Time, many things to remember, and of course, the time has to be remembered. So, because for every presentation there is a limit of time, time is limited, and whether a chairman or somebody is telling you the time is getting over and limited and other things, you should manage your presentation within the given time. And if you do not know the time before the presentation or before even reaching to the hall, if you can communicate and get the information about the timing, how much time would be given. Sometimes when I go for say keynote speech or special lectures, I always ask the organizer, how much time would you like to give. So, if they say 1 hour or 50 minutes, then I will prepare my slides only for 40 minutes. 10 minutes minimum I will keep for question answers or comments or discussion. That is very, very important. So, this will make a very impactful presentations, and the last session, that is question answers, also very good. During our presentations, sometimes because of time limit we might be skipping few points, and those points might be raised by the audience, and that is a very good thing for you also, that you are able to do it very nicely. Again, avoid prolonged discussion with only one person. This is very, very important, because again time is limited. So, if you spend too much time discussing a one single point, then it is also not very good. And as I have just mentioned, that sometimes we do not know the answers of each question. So, we can say, I am sorry, at present I can't answer your question, but do not go for apology, because you have not done any wrong thing or crime. But you can say that, okay, later on we can discuss, you can get my email address, or in classrooms we say that, okay, in the next lecture then you can discuss. Get back to the question later. If it is really beneficial, one must reach to that person and say that this was your question, this is the answer, or this is the thing which I am having in my mind. Time was limited, so I could not do it there itself. Finish your answer by asking the person who asked the question whether he is satisfied or not, or whether you have answered his question sufficiently or not, because that is very, very important, so that you know that he is satisfied. I keep doing this thing to the students, and whenever they have asked the question, I will try to convince them, and also sometimes based on his question I will raise another question to the audience. But when time is not that constraint, then all these things can be done. Now, these PowerPoint pointers, monitors, screens, we have to use very judiciously with good practice. Otherwise, if we use too many flashlights or pointers or fancy mouse pointers, they all will go towards the distracting to the audience, and it is not good. Keep as simple as, but the content has to be very good. That will make the long lasting impact in the audience. And again, try to face the audience all the time. Be prepared for all kind of interruptions also. For example, late arrivals, sometimes cell phones, sometimes cell phone may ring, and that is a distraction, and the projector may go bad, there may be fire drills in between, all kinds of things can happen. So, one has to prepare and should not get distracted by these things. In large conferences, as I have said, that the lights are turned down, and then it becomes very difficult to see the faces or have a eye contact with the audience. But still one should develop a practice, so that that is there. Another, on the lighter side, sometimes you may find that people are snoring in the audience, and that may distract you. Some other important aspects, handouts, that you can do it later on, or you can give to the audience later on, or can say that, okay, I will pass through emails and other things. Because if you provide in the beginning these handouts, there might be distraction in the attention, so better and do it later on. You know that visual aids, this is what we have been discussing, are in which will improve the interest of a presentation. But what you want to say, you should say very clearly, design carefully, and also depends on what type of talk is there. Basically, type of talk means I am saying that what is your audience is going to be. Now, about the slides and some points we have already covered, like what are the setups, equipments, and how the display will appear, that has to be tested. Sometimes a technician might operate your slides. So, but I do not prefer. If it is possible, when you carry such devices, you can put the dongle inside their system, and then you are having full control over this. But these things can only happen, and you will have confidence once you have already reached to all before your presentation and have checked everything there. Sometimes we need to use a particular slide twice, no problem, we can have a duplicate of that one. Always check your slides for typographic errors, consistency of fonts and layout. In one of my previous slides, you might have observed there were one spelling mistakes, and that I have realized that should not have been there. So, this is how you realize, and in future slides one always try to improve as much as possible. Again, have limited points, limited words in each points, font size, typeface, depending on I would prefer 24 size, and avoid using diagram prepared for a technical report in your talk by a poor quality diagram. I mean here too much detail, too little, too small size is always very bad, and we are almost reaching to end of this 3-part discussion. What type of visual aids should I use? Earlier we used to have like overhead projectors, now no more in use. So, we know that we will be in most of these PowerPoint presentations I will be using these projectors, and therefore or sometimes the screens are also there. I find little constraint with the screens, especially with aspect ratio. So, again if possible please check all these things before you make a final presentation, and you have to see that how people will see your presentation. So, how I should design in a very effective manner my slides, that is there, and whether the visuals which I will project are also clearly visible to the audience or not, that one has to keep in mind. And so, this present the aid at the appropriate point in your presentation, that is one should rely on, one should use them, and give your audience a few seconds to comprehend, and then comment on the aid or whatever the things which you are using, and especially about the slides, and the topic and other things becomes very important, and they should be introduced in the beginning, and sometimes in between also you can refer back that this is what you were trying to do this thing. Now, almost last point is here is the rehearse thoroughly. I find that this is very important, especially for beginners, that have a plan B in the event of technical difficulties. Sometimes your time is losing because the compatibility issue, sometimes the projector has gone bad and other things, you may not be given the same time. So, one has to have a plan B. Most of the time carry your PowerPoint presentations, one may be in your pen drive, one may be in your laptop, and so on. Rehearse before going for final presentations, before someone or many people, your colleagues, friends, so that they can provide you a complete honest feedback about the slides, content, and overall body language and other things. And of course, it will bring the issue of time management also. So, you tell to the during the rehearsal, you tell to the audience or your colleagues that I have been allotted only 15 minutes for my talk. So, someone should also watch that whether I am able to finish convincingly within 15 minutes time or not. So, those kind of things, and they can also comment on the quality of slides, colors, font size, font type, take their advice as honestly and as freely they can provide to you, because this will improve before you go for final presentations. So, this think that when you are going to make presentation, the content of your slide is for the audience, not for you, not to the presenters. And all the time if you already felt that something will be hard to read or understand, do not use it. And because sometimes it happens that the font size is too small, you are trying to use somebody's figure, quality is not good, then if it can be avoided, better it avoid, do not go for use that slide there. And when possible, run your presentation from hard disk rather than a pen drive, because sometimes anything. So, I would say keep backup about these things. If you are using your own laptop or system, then hard disk is better, but if I am going to use somebody else's system in a conference or meeting, then I should carry my PowerPoint presentations at least in 2 pen drives. This is what the practice I have been following since long. I always carry 2 copies of my PowerPoint presentation in 2 separate pen drives. Sometimes a pen drive can go bad. Nowadays it is rare, but you never know, and I may lose a very important time or even a project. So, it is always to have good backup. and don't depend all the time on internet so that you would be able to download. So, it is another important thing is transfer your PowerPoint presentation on the hard disk of the system which is going to be used for presentation, rather than directly presenting through your pen drive. Sometimes people, they do not want to share their PowerPoint presentations that in future somebody can take out from the hard disk. So, they will try to project or make PowerPoint presentation through directly from pen drive, and that may be the slow while making presentation from one slide to another and within one slide, and if there are figures, images, that may be slow, and that means you are losing time. So, the best thing is first to transfer on hard disk, make presentation, and if you feel that your research is so important and that thing has got the copyright issue, another thing you may later on delete, when not just after the presentation, but after the session one is allowed definitely not to share or delete from hard disk. But try always to make presentation through the hard disk rather than directly from pen drive. So, this brings to the end of all 3-part discussions on PowerPoint presentation. Some points have been repeated once or twice, but it was necessary, it was intended to do it so that one would remember all the time, and that while making a impactful presentation, the necessary points should be kept in mind, things should be rehearsed properly, and then come for a very impactful PowerPoint presentation. With this I end. Thank you very much.